Hello everyone, welcome to part one of a new series for this Halloween season. Quite a few years ago we did a review of Goosebumps, went back and looked at a favorite childhood series, and we're growing up in the 90s. This was like all the rage, and the 90s had a whole bunch of these kids themed horror books and TV shows, whatever. Goosebumps really started a craze through that decade. We had things like Are You Afraid of the Dark with Nickelodeon, that was another one that was very well known, and a series that you hadn't even heard about, right, until I mentioned it.
Never even heard
From that
of.
time period that was not as popular, but I really enjoyed, in the same vein as Goosebumps, was Deadtime Stories.
Ooh,
And
let us know if you've heard of them.
yes, because these were one of many from this time period. Were not as popular, but I really enjoyed them. I had the first like 2/3 of them through the Scholastic magazine in elementary school and that kind of thing. And we recently completed our collection of them. Decided we'd do the same thing, go back, revisit the 90s, read through all of these, and come up here and talk about them. And again, talk about them, trying to think of the perspective a little bit of like if I was, back at that time, second, third, fourth grade, which ones would I like the best? I'm talking about our reviews.
I wish I could be that age again.
You get the Scholastic magazine,
man,
all that stuff.
That'd be awesome.
Oh,
Just to not be like
Personal pan pizza at points, and like
just to not be in this time, a simpler time. Think of how much nicer the world was. Everything was gonna be okay.
in many ways, yes. Alright, so in this video we're going to start with just the first two, talk about those briefly. We have Terror in Tiny Town, and number 2 is Invasion of the Appleheads. And that's the remake, the re-release cover.
Which I don't know.
I hate the logo change. The logo change is so boring.
But I kind of like... One thing about the series, it's darker than Goosebumps. Like, if you look at, like, the pictures on the Goosebumps covers...
A little less cartoony.
Yeah, this goes better with what it is, because I think they are darker.
But these feel very 90s kids horror.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Vibe,
This doesn't look quite as 90s, but
yeah.
I think that fits it better. I don't know. I like those.
I like the old covers much better. Anyway, start with the first
So
one
we
here.
have number 1, Terror in Tiny Town. Willie has the coolest train set ever. Even though everything in it is really small, it takes up half the basement. That's a lot. There's a tiny castle with tiny knights in armor and tiny dragons. There's a tiny pioneer village with tiny log cabins and tiny farm equipment. There's even a tiny first family in Tiny Town called the Weevils. But ever since Willie added Hurley the Hobo to his tiny collection, Tiny Town has been, well, strange. Willie's toys aren't always where he left them, and sometimes Willie even hears the tiny town train hooting in the night. But Tiny Town little figures can't really be plotting to take over Willie's house, can they?
Yes. So basically, it is a twisted version of Toy Story. All the toys coming to life, and they try and take over and spread out, and it's all that. And it all starts with this is the one where it started with the lightning storm, and then it came to life with the train tracks, kind of like shocking all the toys, like the electricity giving them life, and you have that whole. But overall, I think it was a good start to the series. It was definitely. I think it separated itself a little bit from Goosebumps, something a little different. I ended up giving it a 7.
I gave it a 6.5.
So about the same, yeah.
I think overall, again, much darker than Goosebumps, but it felt more like if I was a kid reading this, I would feel like it took me more seriously as a kid.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it was actually trying to be scary instead of, like, corny, like Goosebumps.
Trying to think of the perspective of being, like, 9 years old again. Like, I feel like I remember, it was probably around the time I was reading these, it was probably like 8 or 9 when they were coming out, and I remember thinking it was a little more spooky, felt like a little more perilous, a little less cartoony in many ways, a lot of Goosebumps. But again, definitely 7, 6.5, pretty solid start. Not one of the best ones, but a good start to the series.
I mean, I think when the toys are attacking the kids, like, that doesn't really hurt you. You're fine. There was a little bit. There were a couple things that were.
But then you had like the robot toys were shooting real lasers at the end, and like
it
some stuff
got
a
little
little
crazy. But...
And it has one of the ending is a cliffhanger ending.
Yes.
Very much so.
Yes.
Moving on to Invasion of the Appleheads, which I very vividly remembered this cover from when I was a little kid, and we first found a copy of this in like the thrift store or whatever. I was like, wow, I remember that very vividly, that cover, for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a very 90s cover that just looks so 90s. For Robin and Andy, moving to a new town is painful enough, but when their parents make them go on a boring sightseeing tour, it's nothing but torture. Just when Robin and Andy think it can't get any worse, they arrive at an old Appleton orchard. There's some kind of Halloween celebration going on, even though the place is supposed to be destroyed, and the witches and ghouls look frighteningly real. Then something terrible happens. Their parents disappear on the haunted hayride, and when Robin and Andy find them, they've been turned into shrunken old Applehead dolls. Something definitely is rotten in Appleton. Now only Robin and Andy can stop it.
Yep, it's all about 300-year-old witches and their big apple orchard, and you're trying to get all the kids and all the parents, all the adults in town turn into the Applehead dolls, and all of the children are turned into zombies. But our two main
They
cast,
escape.
they escape because they don't eat the apples, and it's all about them escaping and trying to help along with the very mysterious worker on the farm, without revealing anything, who has a history with these witches. Kind of, he helps them out.
This is Hocus Pocus in book form.
It is kind of hocus pocus.
This
a
is
little bit. Yeah,
Hocus Pocus.
I didn't think about that at all, though.
You have Billy Butcher. That's the
Yeah.
man helping them.
That's
like it's
true.
literally
Yeah.
this is
I
this
did
is
not think about
Hocus
that.
Pocus in book form.
Did not think about
I
that.
really enjoyed it.
I gave it an 8.
I gave it a 7.5.
Okay, so we're pretty consistent so far.
We are consistent. But yeah, this was a
We have not seen each other's. We did this separately, so we have not
Don't
seen
look at my paper.
each other's rankings or anything.
But I enjoyed this one. I thought this was really good, and I love Hocus Pocus, and this was very much Hocus Pocus.
That was it was a fun like Halloween witch story. Like it's
Yeah.
the kind of thing as a kid, like around that time of year, and the feeling of the apples. Like it actually did invoke the feeling of October, the feeling of autumn, those autumn sounds and
very
flavors.
like
It was well done.
small town.
Yeah.
Like it felt
Yeah.
like Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, it was well
felt
done.
like that little. But I enjoyed it. I
Yeah,
liked this
especially for like a young kid's book, it did. Just again, it did invoke that atmosphere that it needed, and I thought that was very important
Yes,
for the
definitely.
story. So yeah, that was it was good. I think it was definitely good because it is what we both agreed, a slight step up from the first one. So it's
Yeah,
like,
this
all
one
right,
was better.
already has a solid start and then moves up. So it's like this is a good kid series so far for
Yeah.
for like the spooky stories kind of thing, and not one that's as well known. So a good start for the series, and come back next video and move on to the next 2 books.
Ooh.